lunchtime. Our expectation and our hope, kind of aligned with our theme, is this notion of connecting Africa's entrepreneurship ecosystem. One of the impetus for starting this, for organizing this forum was I had lots of conversations with different players in the ecosystem, and there was a lot of conversations about the need for collaboration, for streamlining, for thinking through how we can partner between the ecosystem players, the business service providers, academic institutions, and so on. So our goal at lunch is for everyone to sit next to someone they don't know, kind of move around tables, but each group or each table should come up with one actionable item. So we don't just want to have conversations, we want to have some takeaways. So one actionable item of a specific collaboration you're going to walk away and work on when you leave here. So it could be academia with business, it could be academia with academia, it could be entrepreneurs with whoever you want. So we're going to have a bit of a report out after lunch where people can showcase some examples of how academia, industry partners, and how we can do a better job collaborating. So is everyone clear on sort of what we're doing for lunch? Great. So to give some examples of those partnerships, we're going to do an institutional spotlight and give a brief overview of how Carnegie Mellon, both in Africa and in the US, has partnered with industry, to give you some examples right before we break for lunch. So I'd like to welcome Alan back to speak on what we do here at CMU Africa with industry.
All right, thanks, Bemi. And I realize I'm the one between you and calories, so I'll talk like an auctioneer. Anyways, so good afternoon. Thank you. It's been a really great morning, excellent sessions, great speakers, lots of interesting points. And as Bemi said, the purpose of this is to kind of seed the conversation at lunch with some examples of partnerships and things like that. So I was just going to give a couple of examples of way Carnegie Mellon University Africa works with partnerships. And as Bemi said, industry, that's one important partner, and I think about it as external partnerships. So it could be industry, it could be government, it could be nonprofits, it could be SMEs. We partner with more than 200 organizations of those types, and they range from things like coffee cooperatives to global automobile manufacturers to government agencies. So very broad range of these different partnerships. And why do we do this? Because it really enhances both our educational activities and our research activities, which is our core mission. And they enhance it in many ways. And one of the most important ways, I think, is by engaging with industry defined kind of in this broad sense of including government and not-for-profits, et cetera, is they really bring ideas and problems. And so they keep us grounded with what's going on in the real world. And working together, we often can come up with novel solutions. That is part of the innovation, is sort of identifying those problems and challenges. They're important collaborators. We share expertise. We share knowledge. We share equipment sometimes. They also provide financial support for research. In terms of our education programs, we build that in through practicum courses where teams of students will work with an industry sponsor, which means that they'll work with someone from that company on a problem that helping the company solve a technical problem that they set up. That's a really powerful experience for the students, but it can be very beneficial for the company in terms of defining a prototype. Our degree programs require internships, which really give students great real-world experience and things like that. So that's a high level sort of talking about partnerships. And let me just I'll give one example because we're late for lunch as opposed to I had two initially. But let me give one example of sort of a set of partnerships and some of the interesting outcomes that led from these partnerships. So the first is the story about the founding of a Kigali company that's called SLS Energy. And it was founded by 3 CMU Africa alumni. And the goal of SLS Energy is to repurpose used electric vehicle batteries for cost-effective energy storage to provide uninterruptible power when the electricity grid goes down. So it's an important problem in many parts of Africa because the electricity grid isn't as dependable as we would like at times. So there have been multiple corporate partners that have been involved in this process that led to the idea that is SLS Energy. And I think one important thing to point out is that the objective of these partnerships wasn't to create a startup, right? The objectives of these partnerships was to study, to do research on e-waste or different things. But out of those partnerships, in a nonlinear way, synergistic fashion, the ideas came out that became SLS Energy. So I think that's one of the important things, is that these partnerships lead in directions that you might not have anticipated. So it's just one of the beneficial outcomes of the partnership. So the first key partnership was led to the creation, I would say, of SLS Storage, was two CMU Africa faculty members collaborated with EnviroServe Rwanda and Hinkley in Nigeria, which are two e-waste companies, right? And they won it together. They won this International Industrial Research Grant from Global Leap. And they were focused on what to do about e-waste. And so everybody knows about e-waste. When you throw away your phone or your computer or something like that, and there's a lot of toxic substances. How do we manage that waste stream? And that's what the research was about. But part of the research was about batteries, right? A lot of these all these electronic devices have these batteries. And so what are you going to do with these batteries? And so to conduct the research, they needed to get some equipment for our laboratory to do some battery testing, right? We didn't have that equipment. And so one of the things that this partnership did led to getting this grant that led to us getting some battery testing equipment in our laboratories. The second thing it provides us some financial support for some of our students to actually work on the research. And so that was another thing. And so it provided that sort of support. And so that was really important sort of ingredients for us thinking about e-waste and batteries. And one of the students that was working on that, Patrick, turned out to be one of the co-founders of SLS Energy. So that was an important part of the kind of puzzle. Several of the critical pieces were provided by that e-waste project, but there were two other important partnerships. So another was a student who was working on the e-waste project actually brought valuable skills to the project from an internship that she had done with Hitachi. So another way that we work with companies is through internships. So a student had an internship at Hitachi, learned something about batteries, and this was an internship actually in Japan, that she brought back to the team that sort of enhanced what they were doing around batteries. And then finally, Leandra, another of the co-founders of SLS Energy, spent a semester at our Pittsburgh campus working in a laboratory member of another faculty member working on batteries, modeling batteries in a context of thinking about repurposing. And so there are all these different ingredients, all these different partnerships with different companies. The goal wasn't to create a startup, but the result of these partnerships was this synergistic convergence that led to innovation, and it led to the creation of this new company that's testing their prototypes at the airport right now. They have 6 employees. They came in second in the Hanga Pitch Fest last year and things like that. And really, these partnerships were really integral to creating these ideas and the innovation that sort of led to the company. So I have a second example here that I'm just going to skip over in the interest of time to get us back a little bit on schedule, but I'd be happy to talk. It's another one where we worked with a nonprofit here in Rwanda to create a digital health application that's very widely used to collect maternal health data in Rwanda, and it's actually getting deployed now in Burundi. So I think that's another sort of exciting where we partnered with a nonprofit to do that. And so again, they brought this problem that really grounded the students to do this research and things like that. So let me, those are just some examples, just one example I gave in detail, how the importance of these sort of partnerships and how they lead to innovation. And I hope these stories inspire us to form new collaboration partnerships amongst ourselves and with other people. So I wanted to thank everybody again for participating in the forum. It's been a really exciting day, as I said. Now I want to introduce Brian Feldman, who's the director of Optum, who's going to provide another perspective on partnerships and the importance of partnerships when we think about the innovation ecosystem, think about the entrepreneurship ecosystems, and why these partnerships are so important. So Brian, if you'd like to come up to the podium, thank you.
Thanks, Alan, for the introduction. And I'd like to just really dive in a little bit more on the importance of partnerships. And one of the reasons that I'm here today is the partnership between the CMU Africa campus and the CMU campus in Pittsburgh. And looking at how these organizations can come together, use all the expertise and talent that's in the engineering department here, and piggyback off of and pair with some of the business school and other curriculums that are taught at CMU Pittsburgh that can really contribute to having a very holistic, additive environment where both parties benefit. Pittsburgh learning about what sort of opportunities and growth is available in Africa, and the students from CMU Africa and other partner schools seeing how they can formulate ideas around their business. And looking from a little bit more of a broad sense, we can try to understand where government, corporates, and other NGOs all come into play and can partner and work with CMU Africa in a way that allows both parties to win and use borrowed expertise to really take an on-the-ground approach to building out new endeavors and enterprises within Rwanda and the African ecosystem. A lot of the governments or a lot of the multinational companies that come here want to be doing business in Africa. They want to be growing. They want to see this ecosystem evolve and develop. And at the same time, they lack some of the fundamental knowledge of seeing how do things work here, not knowing how the culture works, not knowing how to interact with some of the people, and needing a little bit of assistance in being able to really function as a well-oiled organization here. That's where all of the exceptional talent and knowledge that comes from the universities comes into play. And by having this fundamental relationship between universities, corporations, and the government, all of these new organizations can come, grow, and become a much more powerful way of seeing business across the continent expand into a new manner. And as we look at some of the organizations that CMU has, such as the Corporate Startup Lab, that partners university students with corporations and government and other big businesses, it provides a great avenue where we can look to say, as company X or company Y wants to do business here, pulling on Alan's example of how Hitachi was able to provide support and knowledge around students' understanding of how to use batteries in a new way, this can facilitate new businesses, new ideas, and new growth in Rwanda and other regions across Africa. And as we look at what sort of opportunities and exemplary examples can exist in the future, we can think about what opportunities exist for big companies, for the government, or for NGOs to partner with CMU or any of the other respective educational institutions that are here today, and try to understand ways that create win-win situations that not only lead to the students succeeding, not only lead to the companies or the government succeeding, but provide a holistic ecosystem growth that helps all of the parties involved. And before we head to lunch, I'd like to leave with a closing thought around how any partnership, whether it's a friendship, a business partnership, can really be seen as successful. And it's when you ask everyone involved, who's gaining more from this relationship? If both parties say I am, then that can be a sign of where both people are contributing and really gaining the most value from both parties, and everyone wins as a result. Thank you.